Welcome back to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at an old favorite, not the super module Queen of the Spiders, but within Module D1, Descent into the Depths of the Earth. The reason I'm using this instead of the reprint I have from 1981 with D1 and D2 together is simple. That's away at college. This is the one I have access to, so I'm going to go ahead and do it out of here. And I'm going to show that these are worth getting. I'm going to show there are a few good things in here beyond editing that would make picking up the Queen of the Spiders worthwhile, even if you have the other modules. So today, Descent in the Depths of the Earth, Module D1. This is at fan request. A couple of fans have asked for this one, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I'll finish out D2, D3, and the DQ1 in the next few months. I'll take a look at the entire Giants Drow series. Please remember, I'm looking for subscribers. Channel's growing great. Let's keep it growing. I really appreciate it. If you've been on the fence, come on in. We talk about games here a lot. Also, I have an active Patreon going, and I have rewards on the Patreon, so please take a look at it. And now for the commercial, back to the important stuff. From Queen of the Spiders, a look at Module D1, Descent in the Depths of the Earth, on page 121. Okay, despite the cover, as I said, we're going to be taking a look at Descent in the Depths of the Earth, D1 today, out of the Queen of the Spiders. I could not find Queen of the Spiders, this super module, on DriveThruRPG. I don't know if it's available or not. I do know that D1 and D2 together are available for about $5 each, and then D3 is available for $5. So you can definitely get the PDFs of the originals. So here we go. Some great interior art from the original. And then this is kind of a link. It's some of the old discussion of D1, of how you're going to link this to the Giants. I guess I should go back and start at the beginning. If you've played modules G1, G2, and G3, which is the studying the Hill Giant Chief, the Frost Giant Jarl, and then the Fire Giant King, once you've played through those, you find clues in there that lead to why the Giants were being in an uprise, and that leads you to the depths of the earth and the mysterious Drow. This is the first real look at Drow, and certainly the first look at Drow I had. Fiend Folio came out in 1981, same year I bought my copy of D1, D2, so I had Fiend Folio to look at the Drow and get a full write-up, but I also had it out of this. But even at that, back in the day, you had to kind of cross-reference between the two in order to know what was going on. So now we're at the fourth leg of the series, the D1 part, and it says right away, your players don't have to do this. There's not anything hinging on them going through the rest of the series. Once they've thwarted all the Giants in their designs, that pretty much ends the menace, and you're only doing this to find out and maybe getting a little revenge, depending on what happened to various player characters. I'm all for that, and I think that is something that the DM should stress, that this is not a mandatory world-saving kind of mission. Honestly, I've done that, and it makes it more fun. I find the players tend to relax a little bit if the fate of the world is not resting on their shoulders. So there is a temptation as you read Descent in the Depths of the Earth, just kind of blow it off and just say, well, this is just kind of a placekeeper of a module. It's not really, there's not a lot here. Huge mistake. This is a wonderful sandbox. I have run this completely by its own, not even told my players that I was pulling it out of D1, and just run it just because it is so much fun to just root around the Underdark. You get to encounter all kinds of cool stuff that my players hadn't encountered yet, and you get to deal with the Drow. Now, I love the Drow. They're one of my favorite bad guys in all of D&D. My players will tell you they're a little tired of the Drow. But to be fair, I haven't really hit them with Drow, and it's got to be 2 or 3 years now. So Drow may be making a comeback in my campaign. But anyway, we got a neat look at the Dark Elf houses, and this is why this book kind of helps us, because we get the brooches, the names and the brooches of the various noble houses. I don't remember this being in the D1 module itself, so that's kind of cool. And then we get the brooches of the merchant clans associated with the houses. So that was pretty neat, and we got some patrols and there's just good stuff for that. So now we take a look here and we see the Koatoa. Koatoa. The Koatoa don't appear until the second part of this, but they're called out here. So I'm going to pretty much ignore it for right now. And we're going to skip past. Cool period artwork. I love that stuff. The Route to the Warrens. And you get a neat little map book with this guy. And these maps are reprints of all of the original maps. And there you go. They're Frost Giant, Jarl, and Fire Giant. And here's the Caverns and Warrens of the Troglodytes. So you get this big map here of where you're going to be walking around. And then you get the primary passage, secondary passage, and tertiary passages that are to be used for any of your generic Underdark encounters. So, and then encounter areas 1 through 5. So I freewheel the maps mostly. I do 3D setups. I use tiles. So I'll take a look at the map and I'll set it up similarly, but my players know I'm not going to stay exactly to what the module shows. So I'm not too worried about that end. But here we get encounters, and this is in Area D3. We get a Drow male contingent. And anybody familiar with the Drizzt Do'Urden books is going to be a little surprised because there's males running things and females aren't all clerics and that kind of stuff. I love how Drow have been fleshed out in the late 80s and into the early 90s, how they were fleshed out and made just outstanding. And I use that in my campaigns. A lot of the Drizzt Do'Urden stuff is absolutely in my campaign. Menzo Berenzan exists in my Greyhawk. But the books, the original books showing the male and female contingents are kind of nice. They're a nice little walk back in time there. And then we get to Encounter Area M12, which has 12 Ratmen working for Mind Flayers. I found this kind of funny. Here we have a Drow elf merchant who's been tied up and being questioned by an Illithid. And the Illithid says, "You'd better tell me the truth. I need to know this information." And I'm going, well, why didn't you just rip it out of the guy's mind? And the answer is, D&D hadn't progressed that much yet. This was all still new to all of us when this was written. The original was written, by the way, in 1978. The reprint was just done in 81 to combine the two. So the Illithid could tear it out of his mind, and in this, he has to interrogate him and everything, and he's guarded by 12 were-rats. Now, a word on psionics. Anybody who's followed my channel for a while knows I don't allow psionics in my campaign, for monsters or for players. I found they were unbalancing, and I never felt it fit the flavor of D&D. So what we do is the Mind Flayers all have the same powers. It's just that they're simply magical abilities, innate magic powers they have. Their Mind Blast is absolutely a Mind Blast and does 12 die 6 damage in our game. You get a saving throw for half, and then if you have a Ring of Mind Shielding on, that will reduce the damage by 2 per die, just like a Ring of Fire Resistance reduces Fireball. But everything is based on magic, so if a character has MR and a Mind Flayer goes to Mind Blast them, they get an MR check first before they have to make any saving throws or anything. We've just found this to be much easier. I've done this now for 40 years, and I found it works beautifully. Okay, back over. So you have to fight the 2 Mind Flayers, which in itself can be nasty. And you got 12 were-rats. Now keep in mind, your group is somewhere 8 to 12. And probably if you've gone through the first 3, you're closer to 12. So you're pretty much able to deal with this kind of encounter. That shouldn't be any huge deal for you. Play it intelligently. The Ratmen are not real smart, but they're very cunning. The Mind Flayers are very, very smart. They'll know how to allocate their troops for their best use. So we get some nice wandering monsters. Do not underestimate the wandering monsters. These are fantastic in this because sound travels. And creatures who've lived underground for a very long time, their whole lives, are able to echolocate in my world simply because they have experience in dealing with a lot of echoes. So wandering monsters can lead to more wandering monsters. I did an entire night one night in this where it started with 1 wandering monster encounter, and I kept rolling wandering monsters. The entire game that night was wandering monster encounters and them basically running for their lives, even at 12th level. I ended up not touching anything I'd written for the game, which was fine because I was all set for the next game. So don't underestimate wandering monsters in an echoey cavern situation. And then we get down here, we get some bugbears and working for some drow males. And we just have all kinds of neat little encounters here with a lot of cash. There's a lot of treasure to be had in this this adventure. Here we have a side cavern, which has 15 gargoyles in it. That is a nasty encounter, even at 12th level. There's another encounter with 23 gargoyles. This one, the side cavern, the players were playing pretty well, and I threw all 15 gargoyles at them, and we had a massive fight, but the players did pretty well. But gargoyles aren't all that tough when you're 12th level. The players had some hold monsters and other things to take them out. Hold monsters very effective when the creature's flying, by the way, flying with wings, because suddenly they stop beating their wings and they smash into the ground. So that was a good encounter. The purple worm is also a very good encounter. Lots of combat, lots of damage there. Now we get to a drow cavern with 14 drow living in it, males and females mixed. If you were able to defeat the female commander, you do get quite a bit of loot from her. You get +2 chain, a +2 buckler. Now those are drow makes, same with the short sword and the dagger, and even the death lance. All this will only work while the strange emanations from drow Underdark are in place. But since you're going to be in the Underdark throughout this adventure, take the stuff. It's absolutely worth taking. I had run this adventure one time where I gave out an oil that the players were able to smear on their swords. If they did it once every 60 days, they were able to use the drow stuff even up in daylight. That was pretty good. I was able to give out some really nice drow things, and then they just went to an alchemist and paid a lot of money, but found a way to duplicate it, but it was very expensive. So eventually, when they got regular magic items, they were able to kind of let go of the sentimental attachment to the drow stuff. One of the players actually made a point of saying, I'm going to hang the stuff, in my basement underground so that the sunlight can't reach it, and just keep it as keepsakes. I thought that was pretty neat. So now we go to the Sunken Cave, which has Asberdes, the Lich. He is a super genius. Wile E. Coyote, move over. Here comes the super genius. Supra genius. This guy is nasty. Play him the way he's written. I even played him with just the spells he had. He is lethal. I had him do hit and run tactics, where he moved around a lot and struck, and then dimension doored and struck and teleported. Teleports are limited in the Underdark, but he was still familiar with it. He's lived down here a long time. But I had him that he was not in his right mind. So eventually he kind of got tired of the game, and he was just kind of done, and the players were able to kind of defeat him that way. His phylactery was never found. He's still lurking somewhere in my Underdark. By the way, I have run this probably at least 4 or 5 times over the years, and I've been a player in it at least twice. And that's just me searching my memories. This is one of my favorite of the GD series. I think these are really good ones. Now we get to the side cavern, and there are 23 gargoyles here. So you think, well, they already fought 15. 23 is no big deal. Well, I did something in this encounter where I was kind of penalizing the players a little bit. I had a couple of fighters who were thinking with their fists and not using any strategy and just bullying their way into stuff. And I kind of suckered them that this would be a good idea to have them, just kind of burst into the side cavern or whatever. Well, I had the gargoyles swarm them. So the fighters and a couple of the other players that were in the area got swarmed by 23 gargoyles. I had already planned that if they did get swarmed, I would take away all bonuses to armor class for shields or any movement. That would be dexterity, boots of speed, boots of strength, and springing. They would be at their armor class. I tore them up real good with 20 plus gargoyles lurking in this area, swarming them, and I was giving them 6 plus a die 4 attacks per round. Per gargoyle or per person in the area. It wasn't even all the gargoyle attacks they can do. Gargoyles attack 4 times in a round. But even leaving the gargoyles as they were with hit dice and chances to hit, which is no bonus, and even with their small damage, I still tore them up real good with those modified rules. So it's something to think about in that particular cavern. Then we go into an area with a bunch of ghouls, 32 ghouls and 4 ghasts. Don't underestimate this encounter. A failed save versus paralysis can find your elves fighting alone. And keep in mind, ghasts paralyze elves as well. This can be incredibly nasty, especially if your cleric happens to be elsewhere or down when it happens. So be very careful with that. Here we meet 2 Hyraco Sphinxes. I love the Sphinxes. I'm going to do a video on the Sphinxes soon. I love Sphinxes in D&D, and they work for the Drow. Now we go to the Troll Caves. The stench in here is really overwhelming, but we have a bunch of trolls in here. 26, 36, 44 trolls lurking in this area. Trolls! They're nasty, and they're going to come help each other. So once the party starts making noise, these trolls are going to come in from other places and start fighting with their brethren. That can be a really nasty encounter very quickly. And then we have a bunch of bugbears in here, the Bugbear Chief's Den and the Sub-Chief's Cave. And then we go to the Troglodyte Caves. The Troglodytes are fun. They're more fun when they're lower, when their overwhelming stench can disable the players. Once you get to higher levels, that's not as big a deal. And then we get to the Warren of the Troglodytes, where we have to deal with the tribal chief and his consorts, and then a bunch of other troglodytes there. I feel this is kind of a lower end of the adventure. And we'll come to a magic pool. This is typical Gygax. If you act in the way you think you should act, you get penalized. You take some gems out of the pool, and then all your gems within, I think it's 10 feet, become worth 1 gold piece. So if they were worth 100, now they're worth 1. But if you counterintuitively throw some cheaper gems in and wait a little bit, then they come out worth more. So I didn't do much of anything with the magic pool. I think in one adventure I had it be a healing pool, simply because the party had been pretty torn up. And now we get to their journey to the shrine of the Koatoa, and I'll do this in another video. Okay, I blew through that kind of quick, and I did that on purpose. I wanted to show you. This is meant as a sandbox. There's no overwhelming reason for your player characters to go here. They're here for the money, and there's a lot of loot to be had. These old dungeons really stock player characters up with money and magical items. But you also want to build flavor with this, because you are getting into the Underdark, and in my case, when I first ran this, it was the first time I'd been in the Underdark, and you want to build that mood. And a little mood builder can be the outstanding 1959 Journey to the Center of the Earth, starring Pat Boone, James Mason, and Arlene Dahl. This, I'm sure, was spiritual food for this. How can I say that? Well, Gary Gygax, as everybody knows, grew up in Chicago for a lot of his life and then moved to Lake Geneva, which is only a few hours north of Chicago. Chicago has WGN. It used to be owned by the Tribune Company. WGN stands for World's Greatest Newspaper. WGN, among broadcasting the Cubs games for many, many years, also had their own shows. Many of the shows were able to be seen around the nation because WGN had a really strong signal. One of those shows was Family Classics, starring Fraser Thomas. Fraser Thomas was the guy behind Garfield Goose, which was another Chicago favorite. And Journey to the Center of the Earth was one of the films that Fraser Thomas featured. So if you lived in Chicago in the 60s and 70s and into the mid-80s, or in the Chicagoland area, you encountered this film probably through Family Classics. Of course, you could see it other places, but most likely you saw it through Family Classics. And why I bring this up is I remember reading this stuff back in the 80s and thinking how much the Underdark stuff felt like Journey to the Center of the Earth. So if you're looking for kind of a primer to get you ready for this, I recommend watching this. This, by the way, is available on HBO Max under the Turner Classic Movies section. I think it's under the Turner Classic app as well, but I'm not sure. I do know it's under HBO Max. We have HBO Max. So if you're looking for some mood music for this, and not a bad film, by the way, from 1959, Journey to the Center of the Earth, it's a pretty good one. Queen of the Spiders, the Drow stuff does fit in very nicely with that. Not there are Drow in Journey to the Center of the Earth, there aren't. But just the feel of the exploration of the Underdark. Very, very flavorful in here. Also, Mysterious Island by Jules Verne was another film, a 1962 film with special effects by Ray Harryhausen, was also featured on Family Classics, and I know that film also influenced a lot of AD&D. Channel 9 also ran Bugs Bunny and Friends on the old Ray Rayner and Friends show, which ran until 1980, and I've often noted that there are many Bugs Bunny, Warner Brothers cartoons things in AD&D, and that's because all this stuff was available to be seen long before any of us had VCRs. So there you go. That's my 2 bits. I have nothing to base that on other than my own experience, but I've noticed it many times in reading the old D&D stuff back in the day, and even now I noticed that, yeah, definitely WGN's programming had an influence. So that's it for today on page 121. I hope you enjoyed this look at D1. Hopefully my modules will have graduated and come back home by the time I'm ready to do D2, but I do think that I saw enough differences in the reprint of D1 that it made worth getting. As I said, I don't think this is available through Drive-Thru-RPG, which is a shame, but D1 and D2 combined are on Drive-Thru-RPG. I'll put a link below, and they cost about $5. So that's all I've got today from page 121. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. Please like and take a look at the Patreon, and I'll see you next time on page 121.